Welcome to Taking Stock. I'm Amanda Lang. Coming up on the show, is it time to sound the all clear on a recession? It looks like our central bank has. And what role should investors play in Canada's housing market? We'll debate. Are they a force for good or bad? Plus, Google is on trial. Is it abusing its dominance? That's all ahead. First, for the week that was in business, it's time for the briefs. The International Energy Agency is calling the end of the fossil fuel era in the year 2080. Consumption is expected to peak by 2030 as global energy policies, including electric vehicle use, take hold. The agency has made predictions of the peak in the past, only to be proved wrong. Now it says current policies alone are enough to see oil demand begin to fall. It was higher gas prices that pushed up inflation in August in the U.S., a jump of 3.7% that made it hotter than July's pace, though the core inflation rate, which ignores food and energy, rose 4.3%. It was a drop from July and the smallest increase in 2 years. Still, all of the data is above the comfort of the central bank there. A strike by U.S. auto workers got underway Friday, but only a small percentage of the total workers have walked off the job. As negotiations continue with GM, Ford, and Stellantis, more workers may follow. The union wants 40% pay raises and restored pension and retiree health benefits. Average rents in Canada rose again in August to a record $2,117 for a one-bedroom apartment, according to Rentals.ca. That's a gain of 16% for apartments and 6.2% for units in houses and townhomes. The rental market remains pressured as high interest rates keep some potential homebuyers on the sidelines. The federal government says it will not charge GST on development costs of newly built rental units. It's encouraging provinces to waive provincial taxes too, a combination that estimates from national banks suggest could shave 10 to 15% off per unit prices of new rentals. One silver lining on higher interest rates, Canadians are taking on less debt. Thanks to the weakest mortgage demand in almost 20 years, households actually improved their balance sheets as incomes rose but debt held steady. That helped push the household debt service ratio lower for the first time in more than a year. But in a sign that stress continues, credit card debt did rise to an all-time high in second quarter. Here's one that might make your eyes water. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration says the main ingredient in allergy medicines, including Sudafed and Dayquil, simply doesn't work. The FDA said new research showed the drugs do no better at resolving allergy symptoms than a placebo. In a rare intervention, the federal minister in charge of Canada's telecom companies ordered Rogers to cooperate with its rivals and make service available to all customers on transit systems in Toronto by October 3rd. François-Philippe Champagne amended the Telecom Act to achieve the directive so that subway users will not be subject to blackouts to service. And those are your business briefs. When it held steady on interest rates recently, our central bank also noted again that it doesn't see the Canadian economy headed toward recession. Are they calling victory too soon? Ted Mallett is Director of Economic Forecasting at the Conference Board of Canada. Ted, great to have you with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
So we ask in part because, of course, we just got some economic data that did show a contraction in the Canadian economy, modest one. We do call recessions in hindsight. We know when they started in the past. What's your expectation of whether we do manage to skirt a recession here and stay in growth?
Well, first of all, I think we really need to change the definition of recession because the standard definition of 2 consecutive quarters is actually quite vague. You can have very small decreases that happen two and a quarter or 2 quarters in a row, or you could have one sharp one and then a period of relatively strong growth. That it ultimately is the same thing, but it's not called a recession. We are actually calling for a recession technically because we think the next 2 quarters are going to be mildly negative as well, along with a very tepid growth in the first quarter of next year. Mm-hmm. So, although it's not a very deep recession, we're going to call it a recession because it just means lost opportunity for people and earners and industries out there.
And of course, we know that one of the key measures for a lot of people, Ted, will be what happens to their own job prospects, their own incomes. If they own a business, then their customers and their sales. Do we expect this one to feel different, given how tight the labor market has been, given how at kind of full capacity, tight capacity our economy has been? Might it feel like a nicer recession, a more friendly recession than some in the past?
It's certain businesses might be in very tough straits as a result, but there are other ones that may be doing relatively well, and obviously their employees. We're only expecting another half-point increase in the unemployment rate, so not even 6%, which not too many years ago, that would have been considered almost full employment in this country. So it is relatively mild, but the fact that this kind of ho-humness is going to persist for quite some time, another year or so, we don't think rates are going to start coming down until the middle of next year. I think people are going to get kind of upset or impatient with the higher costs and really the no strong potential for likely wage increases for the next little while.
So, and that brings us to kind of the levels of indebtedness. We went into the pandemic at very high levels of household debt. We stayed there. We did see, of course, some improvement as some government supports helped some. But here we are. We got record credit card debt again. Even though the balance sheets look a little better thanks to rising incomes, Ted, is that the source of concern, that a lot of Canadians still have more debt than they should?
Well, that's what's happened when we had a number of years of very low interest rates. People got used to what the carrying cost and how much debt they could carry for a certain amount of income. Now we have to get used to the fact that interest rates are 4 points higher than they were before. So that's a serious effect. But even when they start coming down, they're still going to be roughly 2 points higher than what was typical in the during the pandemic as well as in the pre-pandemic period. So the economy has to adjust to a different cost of servicing debt. And some people that are highly leveraged are going to have to live with that for a while and be able to work their way out of it slowly.
Ted, so good to have you for this. Appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Ted Mallett is Director of Economic Forecasting at the Conference Board of Canada. Still ahead, investors are playing a larger role in our housing market. Is that a problem or is it a solution? Stay with us.